Although his name has been associated with heresy, blasphemy, and lunacy for centuries, Charles Darwin, the father of evolution, was nonetheless a groundbreaking leader who left a momentous legacy on all of humanity. Through the formation of his theories, Darwin was able to explain the complexity and diversity of the natural world and reveal the glory of life itself. He turned the world upside down by causing people to question their very existence for the first time. However, his revolutionary ideas were met with fierce resentment from the Christian community, who solely adhered to the biblical story of creation instead of evolution. In 1859, Charles Darwin became a leader when he challenged traditional religious views of creation by providing a new scientific answer to an archaic question. His legacy ignited perhaps the largest debate in all of history between evolutionists and creationists. The repercussions of his ideas led to ideologies like social Darwinism and continued to affect virtually all realms of society throughout history. Charles Darwin was a natural historian, geologist, botanist, and author who was born in 1809 in Shropshire, England, to a successful, intelligent family. While at the University of Cambridge, he was chosen to embark on a research voyage to the Galapagos Islands. This was his famous trip upon the HMS Beagle in 1831. His research from the islands formed the basis of his theories of evolution and the rest of his life's work. He formed the revolutionary idea that the nature of the Earth changed very slowly over immense periods of time. Upon his return to England in 1836, he became a celebrity in the scientific community. However, he was hesitant to publish his work because he feared the implications that it would have in religious and social circles. At this time, British men of science, particularly geologists, were making discoveries which began to threaten the universally accepted biblical story of the creation of Earth by God. Most evangelical Christians adhered to the story of Genesis but began to acknowledge natural sciences to justify creation. Darwin's evidence, however, supported only the scientific explanation, no longer leaving room for religious interpretation. Darwin struggled to publish his work because, as he said in his diary in 1838, "Here then I had last got a theory by which to work, but I was so anxious to avoid prejudice that I determined not for some time to write even the briefest sketch of it." He even said, "It is like confessing a murder." This was because, as Melissa Harmon said, he knew that his discoveries would forever change the way humanity views its place in the world, and that for some will challenge faith in a creator, and he was afraid. He almost wished he had never stumbled upon the concept of evolution. However, Darwin courageously published his book on the origin of species by means of natural selection of the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life on November 24, 1859. Darwin said in his journal, "It cost me 13 months and 10 days hard labor. It is no doubt the chief work of my life." The book was an instant success, with the first edition selling out almost immediately. Scientists from England and the rest of the world read his work, and he received a variety of reactions. Another scientist named Alfred Russel Wallace came to the same conclusions about natural selection entirely independently of Darwin, which made the concept appear more plausible to the audience. The scientific community came to accept Darwin's theories fairly quickly due to the overwhelming physical and visual evidence in his book.
Darwin's theory is, I think it's been accepted so well because it's an immensely powerful tool of explanation, and we humans love to have things explained because that's what science is all about, isn't it? Explaining the world to ourselves. Darwin's theory appears to explain how we got here, how all living things got here, how things change, how we all arose from a common ancestor, how the Earth itself came into being.
Darwin's discoveries revolutionized scientific theories on human existence and the origins of man, which no one had ever done to the extent he was able to. Darwin's friends, Charles Lyell, Thomas Huxley, and Joseph Dalton Hooker, all respectable scientists, had so much faith in him that they always rose to his defense, publicly debating anyone who challenged his ideas. Lyell said about Darwin, "His mind was characterized by clearness, caution, sound judgment, and a good deal of originality. His delight in science was ardent." Darwin's ultimate objective was to reveal the beauty of nature and life itself and encourage others to appreciate and admire the world around them. Although Darwin served as a pioneer of scientific theory, his actions were met with extreme opposition. In his time, religion was the most vital thing in one's life, so his theories basically challenged everyone's beliefs. For that reason, Darwin was viewed as a dissident of Christianity because he preferred science over faith, which was seen as a betrayal of religion. However, he didn't believe that his theories would interfere with people's faith in God. He said in his diary, "I see no good reason why the views given in this volume should shock the religious feelings of anyone." Asa Gray, a Christian colleague of Darwin's, claimed that the theory was too hard for Christians to grasp. Darwin wrote to him in 1860, "I had no intention to write atheistically, but I own that I cannot see, as plainly as others do, and I should wish to do, evidence of design and beneficence on all sides of us. There seems to me too much misery in the world. On the other hand, I cannot anyhow be contented to view this wonderful universe, and especially the nature of man, and conclude that everything is the result of brute force. I am inclined to look at everything as resulting from design laws, with the details, whether good or bad, left to the working out of what we may call chance. Not that this notion at all satisfies me. I feel most deeply that the whole subject is too profound for the human intellect." As one can see, a chasm between scientific and religious thought was developed, and most people began to believe the two could not be accepted simultaneously, causing people to pick a side. In Darwin's obituary, the London Standard noted that true Christians can accept the main scientific facts of evolution just as they do of astronomy and geology, without any prejudice to more ancient and cherished beliefs.
I don't think science proves the existence of God. I don't think science proves the non-existence of God. I think science is science is science.
Charles Darwin left an unintentional legacy on society that affected the camaraderie of the human race. Beginning in the era of the Industrial Revolution, upper-class Americans took it upon themselves to acclimatize Darwin's survival of the fittest theory to justify their superiority over the lower classes. An unfair divide was created between the rich and poor, and Darwin's theories were to blame. This ideology became known as social Darwinism. Opponents of social Darwinism insisted that it was a callous, dog-eat-dog philosophy that weakened the patriotic bonds among Americans, fomented class conflict, and threatened to undermine civilization itself. Wealthy businessmen and other beneficiaries of the Industrial Revolution adopted social Darwinism simply to justify their own greed, good fortune, and unwillingness to help their fellow citizens. Darwin's theories were perverted to fit the social and economic conditions of the time. This ideology was later used to support European imperialism, which then developed into racism. Social Darwinists believed that Europeans and Americans were the stronger species and peoples in developing countries were the weaker. Therefore, colonial empires were justified as part of the process of social evolution, where the strong survived. This greatly harmed the unfortunate members of society who were viewed as inferior and unfit. The Scopes trial of 1925 was proof of Darwin's lasting impact on society. John Scopes, a Tennessee school teacher, challenged the Butler Act, which made it unlawful to teach any theory that denies the story of divine creation of man as taught in the Bible, and to teach instead that man has descended from a lower order of animals. The Supreme Court case that resulted, reasonably nicknamed the Monkey Trials, showed how the evolution versus creation controversy remained a prominent debacle throughout history. As Reverend Frank Ballard wrote, in outlawing the teaching of evolution, proponents argued, fundamentalists were trying to turn back the clock on intellectual progress. The assumptions of fundamentalism are so preposterous, it is pitifully manifest that both the science and theology of many of those posing as authorities are half a century beyond the times. As one can see, the trial was an effect of Darwin's legacy because it showed how people both supported and refuted his ideas until the modern day. It is now evident that in spite of being constantly rejected by those around him, Charles Darwin persevered and held an unshakable faith, not in a creator, but in his theories of evolution and natural selection. He not only made us aware of how nature works, but also of our place within it. His story has inspired other scientists to be brave and pioneer new ways of thinking, even if it's revolutionary. His work has influenced brilliant advances in genetics, molecular biology, ecology, and embryology, which is why his theories will always be relevant. Charles Darwin passed away on April 18, 1882, and at his funeral, his colleague Alfred Russel Wallace perhaps captured his leadership and legacy best, describing Darwin as the philosopher who has wrought a greater revolution in human thought within a quarter of a century than any man of our time, or perhaps any time. He has given us a new conception of the world of life, and a theory which is itself a powerful instrument of research, has shown us how to combine into one consistent whole the facts accumulated all by separate classes of workers, and is thereby revolutionized the whole study of nature.